Hey, good afternoon. I am thrilled to welcome Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Deputy Prime Minister Freeland, Minister Hussen, Minister Gould, Minister Tassi, and MP Collins to Hamilton Mountain today for an important announcement that is so critical to families all across Canada, especially here in Hamilton. We're in the thick of a housing crisis. Minister Hussen was here with me on the campaign trail. That's what we heard at the doors. The average house price in Hamilton is now over $1 million. It's surreal even to think about it. And many of our constituents are worried about being able to afford their own home. As a parent of a teenager, I really get you're also worried about your children, how they'll be able to afford a home. And the cost of living keeps going up too. But we have a plan. And it's a good plan. The budget Deputy Prime Minister Freeland presented yesterday, it includes solid strategies for making housing more affordable for all Canadians. I'm incredibly proud to be a part of this government that's making these responsible investments to make it easier for my constituents and for all Canadians to buy a home. And so, the first time I met the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister, I was still a journalist. It's still weird for me to be on this side of the news conference. It was like 2013, 2014. I don't know if you'll remember this, but you were running for your seat for the first time. And we were meeting at Tim Hortons for the campaign. And the first thing I was told was that the leader of the party at that time, not quite Prime Minister yet, wasn't supposed to do any media. And when he got there, the first thing he said was, "I'm not supposed to do any media, but whatever." And he took the time and he answered all the questions. And it was really personable and friendly. And I was touched. And same with you, like, great interviews, really personable. I was very inspired. And they went inside the Tim Hortons and we waited for the shot after they were done speaking with constituents. I know as journalists you spend a lot of time waiting outside. I'll keep it quick. I appreciate that. But as you were coming out of the Tim Hortons, a man walked up to you and you talked for a minute and then you started hugging and you were both crying, and I was like, I didn't understand what was going on. And you took the time, you came over, I didn't even have to ask, and let me know that you had just encountered by surprise a former RCMP officer who had guarded you when you were a little boy. And I was verklempt. I wasn't supposed to feel that way as a journalist, but it was a beautiful first meeting, and I've been inspired ever since. So thank you very much for being here today. And thank you for the leadership that you've given us over the past 6 years. And so with that, I would like to turn this over to Prime Minister Trudeau now to talk about a subject discussed by so many families here on Hamilton Mountain and across the city every day, affordable housing.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you for reminding me of that story. You know, one of the most important things as leaders, as politicians, is to stay connected with people. And over the years, I've been able to travel to Hamilton and come here a number of times for great announcements, but right across the country as well, where you spend time hearing about the concerns people are facing and try very much to build solutions that are going to respond to them. And that's the work that we have to do as politicians. And there's a lot of time for cynicism and criticism, absolutely. But at the same time, the incredible hard work done by MPs like you, Lisa, by the team we have here, is first and foremost always focused on connecting with people and working with them to build a better future for themselves, for their communities. That's why I'm so glad to be here with the Deputy Prime Minister, with Ministers Gould and Tassi and Hussen, and Chad Collins as well, local MP. Yesterday, Chrystia presented our 2022 budget. It's a plan to make life more affordable for Canadians and grow our economy. A plan that invests in people. Making life more affordable for Canadians, as Lisa said, has to start with addressing housing affordability. It's a big issue for a lot of Canadians, and it's a big issue to solve. There's no one silver bullet that's going to solve everything. That's why our plan has 3 key pillars. The first is helping people save to buy a home. The second is focusing on housing supply to make sure we're creating more homes across the country. And the third is putting an end to the speculation that is driving up housing prices unnecessarily in places like Hamilton and, quite frankly, right across the country. Canada needs more affordable housing. When Canadians work hard and save, they should be able to afford a home. That's certainly what Peter and Felicia did when they bought this beautiful home a few years ago. But even they've seen property values skyrocket since then. Pour beaucoup trop de familles, le rêve de devenir propriétaire dans le marché d'aujourd'hui est tout simplement hors de portée. Et il faut que ça change. Les jeunes Canadiens méritent de pouvoir se bâtir un avenir dans un chez-soi qui leur appartient, tout comme leurs parents ont pu faire avant eux. I met Ala and Ahmed earlier today, who have 3 young children and rent their home. We talked about the challenge of home affordability and the fact that even as they're working hard and trying to set aside some money, the growth of prices, the exponential costs of housing just get further and further out of reach, no matter how hard they work now. That's not right. In a country like Canada, we should be able to make sure that people who work hard, who want to start a family in communities they love, should be able to find a home. Well, we need solutions that'll work for them and for Pete and Felicia and for families right across the country. And every family is facing different situations, which is why we're putting forward a range of solutions that each of them will help. One of the many challenges for Canadians is to be able to save enough money for a down payment. So to help people do just that for their first home, our budget introduced the new tax-free first home savings account, where people can save up to $40,000 tax-free. And that's tax-free on the way in, and it's tax-free on the way out as well. Plus, we're going to double the tax credit they get when they'll buy their first home, which means an extra $1,500 in their pockets. Pour rendre le logement plus abordable, il faut aussi s'attaquer à la pénurie de logements. La population du Canada continue d'augmenter, mais l'offre des logements n'est pas en train de suivre. Et pendant trop longtemps, trop de gouvernements ont négligé le problème. So we need to attack the challenge of supply. This budget puts Canada on a path to double housing construction over the next decade, and that'll mean working with provinces, territories, municipalities, and builders. The new Housing Accelerator Fund will help municipalities, including small towns, unlock supply. We're also investing in clean, energy-efficient housing, and we're investing $4 billion to close the Indigenous housing gap. And finally, our third pillar is in our plan to make housing more affordable by curbing speculation. When foreign investors and corporations use housing as an asset, it drives prices higher and higher and makes homes out of reach of the middle class. Homes are to live in, to raise a family in, to build a life in, not a way to boost a balance sheet. So in this budget, we're going to be banning foreign buyers for 2 years, curbing speculative practices, and moving forward on a home buyer's Bill of Rights. Tous les Canadiens méritent d'avoir un chez-soi abordable. Avec ce budget, on se donne des outils pour changer les choses. These targeted measures will help millennials and all middle-class Canadians achieve their dream of owning a home. Budget 2022 continues our work to help build a strong recovery. Today's historic job numbers show Canada's unemployment rate is now at 5.3%, the lowest in decades. Our plan is working, but we need to keep working to make sure that as our economy grows, it brings everyone along. I know for a lot of families, it does feel like there's a bit of a disconnect. We talk about how the job numbers are great. We talk about how the economy is growing, but they're having trouble affording their groceries and the dream of home ownership seems further and further out of reach. That's why the work we're doing in government is focused on making sure that even as the economy grows, which we want, all Canadians get to benefit. That's where things like childcare, things like housing supports, things like investments in students, investments in seniors, all help us move forward in the right direction. To talk about more on that, I'm very happy right now to turn it over to our extraordinary Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland. Chrystia.
And thank you for that too. I need a little bit of a boost. Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much, Felicia and Peter and little Pete, for hosting us in your really beautiful home, and they have some very good renovations going on inside. I got some tips, and also Ala and Ahmed for talking to us. As you just heard from the Prime Minister, a centerpiece of the budget that we tabled yesterday is investing in people, investing in Canadians. And the evidence shows that when we invest in Canadians, the results are terrific. Just this morning, we learned that as of last month, the Canadian economy has recovered 115% of the jobs lost since the depths of the pandemic. That compares to the US, where only 93% of lost jobs have recovered. And think about that for a minute. When COVID hit, 3 million Canadians lost their jobs. That was 3 million tragedies. 3 million families really, really worried about their future. We've recovered all of those lost jobs and more. And in fact, the unemployment rate in Canada is now 5.3%. That is the lowest level since when we first began collecting comparable statistics in 1976. So thank you, Canadians. Extraordinary work getting through and climbing out of the COVID recession. But what we also know is it's not enough. Having a job is a really, really important part of making life affordable. It's an important part of paying the bills. But we know that people are struggling to afford housing in Canada. Mais nous savons que c'est un grave problème. Le Canada n'a pas suffisamment de logements. Il nous en faut plus, et ce, rapidement. Le budget constitue le plan le plus ambitieux de l'histoire du Canada à mettre en œuvre pour régler ce défi important. Au cours des 10 prochaines années, nous doublerons le nombre de logements que nous construirons. Canada has a problem. We just don't have enough homes. We have a growing population, which is great. Canada has the fastest growing population in the G7. But housing supply just has not kept pace. So we need to build more homes for a growing country, and we need to do it quickly. The budget that we presented yesterday has a plan to address exactly that problem by doubling the number of new homes that Canada will build over the next 10 years. And we also know that we need to make it easier for families like Ala and Ahmed's to get those first keys of their own. Here's how we plan to do that. We'll help Canadians save up for and buy their first home by doubling the first-time home buyer's tax credit and creating a new tax-free first home savings account. We're going to stop foreign investors from buying up properties, and we're going to ensure that houses in Canada are used as homes for Canadian families and do not become a speculative financial asset class. And we're going to support rent-to-own projects and move forward on a home buyer's bill of rights to make the market fairer for Canadians. We need housing that is affordable for everyone. And that means we have to keep on investing to ensure an entire generation of Canadians are not priced out of owning a home. As Canada grows, and as our growing country becomes more prosperous, we're going to need to continue to invest year after year after year in building more homes for our growing country. That's what we set out to do in the budget we tabled yesterday. And I now have the real privilege of turning over the mic to my colleague, my friend, Minister Ahmed Hussen, and he's the guy who is in charge of implementing this fantastic housing plan. Over to you, Ahmed. He doesn't need to.
Thank you so much, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Thank you for your remarks. Your continued hard work to ensure that Canadians are able to build the future of their dreams is incredibly important. Thank you for everything that you do. And Prime Minister, you and Chrystia are the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister that brought in childcare, and now you're bringing in housing supports for Canadians. Thank you. Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here. Bonjour tout le monde. It is also great to be here with Ministers Tassi, as well as Ministers Gould and Lisa Hefner and Chad Collins. Great to be back in Hamilton. I went to school in this city, and it's always a pleasure to come back. And of course, I'd like to thank Felicia and Peter and Lil Pete for welcoming us into your beautiful home. And nice to meet Ala and Ahmed. While talking earlier, I could sense the pride in this family. That you have a place that you can call your own. And growing up in social housing in Regent Park for a number of years, I can't even describe the peace of mind that comes with having a safe and affordable place that you can go to at the end of a long day at work or school. And for many Canadians, owning a home feels like a dream that is just a little bit out of reach. But the bottom line is that, as the Prime Minister said, owning a home should not be a luxury. It should be. It shouldn't be a luxury that is accessed by only a select few. It should be something that should be within reach of all working Canadians that save and work hard towards the dream of home ownership. And that's why our government recognized housing as a human right. We brought back federal leadership in housing. And we know people across the country are facing a number of different housing challenges across the spectrum. That's why we brought in the National Housing Strategy. And yesterday, Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland is helping to enable us to take the next actions with respect to housing challenges faced by Canadians through Budget 2022. We're investing over $14 billion that will create homes for even more Canadians from coast to coast to coast. Through Budget 2022, we're keeping our focus on bringing home ownership within reach. And as the Prime Minister highlighted earlier, it starts with helping people to save for their first home. It's really important. The new first-time homebuyer tax-free savings account will enable Canadians, first-time homebuyers, to put up to $40,000 in a tax-free savings account. And in addition to that, we will be extending the first-time homebuyer incentive program to 2025. Nous allons également étendre et continuer d'améliorer notre incitatif à l'achat d'une première propriété afin que plus de Canadiens puissent y avoir accès. That's on top of doubling the first-time homebuyers tax credit to $10,000. We're also investing $200 million into proven rent-to-own projects across the country, and we'll be working with nonprofits, with co-ops, with developers, with rent-to-own companies, and we're going to do our part to scale up the creation of rent-to-own models that actually work. We know a number of countries that have done this successfully, and we can learn a thing or two from them. C'est une excellente nouvelle pour tous les Canadiens. This is all great news for Canadians. But we're not stopping there. We've always believed in the need to continue to increase housing supply, because we know that with more homes on the market, to rent and buy, prices will come down and stabilize. It is that simple. So we're going to help municipalities and regional governments to cut red tape, increase their capacity to build more supply and faster, and help them to put in place measures to unlock the barriers that prevent more housing supply. That is why we're putting forward $4 billion over 5 years in a new housing accelerator fund, which will work to make sure that each and every Canadian has a home that they deserve and that their dream of home ownership cannot wait any longer. The program will give municipalities the support that they need and speed up the process, cut costly backlogs down, and have more than 100,000 homes built quickly. This is a win-win for Canadian families, renters, and buyers. By going after the speculators, foreign investors, and corporations who are using housing as an asset, we'll be able to unlock even more home ownership opportunities for hardworking Canadians and curb these unfair practices that are leaving many behind. Avec ces budgets, nous rendons le logement plus abordable et nous le faisons en abordant la question sur tous les angles. I think all of us are here today because we agree that this budget recognizes one important fact. All Canadians deserve the homes that they dream of. You deserve a place where you can safely tuck your kids at night and celebrate all the great milestones that come from living a good, hardworking life. We want to make sure owning a home is a reality for you and your kids. And with an additional $14 billion that we are investing in housing through Budget 2022, thank you, Chrystia, we'll do our part to help you achieve that. And, I just want to say, this is about, if you're buying your first home, we will help you save for your first home. We will help bring in more rights for buyers and renters. We will tackle unfair housing practices in the housing market, and we will work to end chronic homelessness. That's what this is about. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Nous allons 20 minutes pour des questions maintenant. We have 20 minutes for questions. One question, one follow-up per reporter. Une question et une question de suivi par journaliste. On commence avec Camille.
Bonjour, Camille Feyereisen pour Radio-Canada. Je vous demandais de répondre aussi en anglais après, s'il vous plaît. Pour aider les gens à faire face à l'inflation, en ce moment, les premiers ministres Doug Ford, Jason Kenney ont coupé les taxes sur l'essence. Le Québec a envoyé des chèques. Pourquoi, de votre côté, ne pas avoir offert un répit immédiat en dehors de l'aide au logement? Et est-ce que les provinces ont eu tort d'agir de la sorte?
Je pense que tous les niveaux de gouvernement sont en train de répondre de leur façon aux défis auxquels les gens font face. On sait que c'est un moment, même avec la croissance économique dans l'économie, où beaucoup de Canadiens ont de la difficulté à payer l'épicerie, à payer l'essence et en plus à s'acheter une maison. C'est pour ça qu'on a mis de l'avant des mesures pour aider avec ces coûts-là. D'abord et avant tout, au niveau des garderies, on est en train de créer des nouveaux espaces, on est en train de baisser le prix à travers le pays pour qu'on puisse aller jusqu'à 10 $ par jour à travers le pays en dans de 5 ans. C'est des grosses réductions dans les coûts de la vie pour les Canadiens. On est aussi en train d'augmenter l'allocation canadienne aux enfants, l'aide aux aînés au niveau de l'inflation pour pouvoir continuer à jongler avec cette inflation. Le grand défi, c'est de pouvoir continuer à être là pour les familles tout en s'assurant qu'on n'est pas en train de contribuer à l'inflation. C'est pour ça qu'on a mis de l'avant un budget responsable qui répond aux besoins des Canadiens et qui va aider à ce niveau-là. I think every order of government is looking at doing what they can to support Canadians through this very difficult time. Even as we're seeing our economy grow incredibly fast and unemployment drop to historically low levels, Canadian families are struggling. The high cost of gas and groceries and Putin's illegal war in Ukraine is going to make that even harder in the coming months. At the same time, buying a home and house prices and rental prices are skyrocketing as well. So we're moving forward with concrete measures that are going to support families without contributing to the inflationary pressures that are making everything more expensive. So whether it's these measures we're announcing today on housing to reduce speculation, to make it easier to save and to increase supply, whether it's things like childcare, fees cut in half this year and down to $10 a day within 5 years. Those are massive savings for families like Alla and Ahmed and for Pete and Felicia's. These are things that are concretely going to help make sure that as our economy grows, everyone gets to benefit from it.
Merci. Et dans le dossier des transferts en santé, les provinces restent un petit peu sur leur faim. Qu'attendez-vous finalement pour négocier une hausse des transferts fédéraux en santé avec les provinces?
Tout d'abord, pendant cette pandémie, le gouvernement fédéral a été là pour les provinces, pour les Canadiens, pour les systèmes de santé à un niveau que du jamais vu. 63 milliards de dollars de plus en investissement du fédéral dans le domaine de la santé, grande partie des transferts aux provinces pour pouvoir justement passer à travers de cette pandémie qui n'est pas finie encore. Mais nous savons en même temps que nous avons besoin d'investir de façon structurante dans nos systèmes de santé. Cette pandémie a démontré à quel point les gens vulnérables sont extrêmement vulnérables. Nos systèmes de santé sont étirés. Nous devons d'être là en tant que partenaires. Alors, nous sommes en train d'avoir des discussions préliminaires avec les provinces sur comment on peut aller de l'avant pour, oui, augmenter pas seulement les transferts en santé, mais s'assurer que les Canadiens, partout au pays, reçoivent les meilleurs résultats de ces investissements, les meilleures qualités de soins de santé à travers le pays. Ça, c'est le grand défi que les gens réclament pendant et depuis cette pandémie, et c'est sur ça qu'on va continuer à travailler en partenariat avec les provinces.
Next question, please.
Sylvie Lenve from CHCH News. When will the new housing plan help people who are struggling right now to find relief? Because I do believe it's 2023 when you can start putting money into the first home tax-free savings account. So what are the immediate changes we can see?
Over the past number of years, we've made significant investments in housing, but as we're seeing, we need to do even more. In 2017, we came forward with a national housing strategy that's up to about $70 billion worth of investments that is helping millions of Canadian families get into their homes over the past few years. There's much more to do. One of the things that is most immediate is the Rapid Housing Initiative, which is actually moving very, very quickly to create more supply in cities across the country. There are many different measures we're putting forward. Some come in quicker than others, but all of them need to be designed right to actually help and not harm the housing markets in Canada, not drive prices up further, which is why we're going to continue to focus on that. But I will turn to Chrystia to complete that answer on housing.
Well, I'll just add a couple of things. So we do recognize that there's an affordability challenge right now for the most vulnerable Canadians. And that's why part of the housing package is a $500 top-up to the Canada Housing Benefit. So that's going to go to the people who need it most. And it will really help a lot of Canadians and Canadian families to pay their bills. The other thing that I would add is, you know, when I tabled the budget yesterday, I said there is no single silver bullet that is going to solve Canada's housing crisis. Nothing that is going to mean that tomorrow every single Canadian can own a home in the neighborhood where they want to live. Canadians are smart, and they want us to have a plan which is honest and realistic. And so what we're saying with this plan is, for the first time, a Canadian federal government is recognizing that housing supply is a challenge, and that the federal government must and can step in to clear some of the roadblocks that are preventing more new homes from being built. It's not going to be fixed in one day. It's not even going to be fixed in 1 year. We're going to have to continue to invest and invest and invest. And it's not just going to be the federal government. You know, this is an effort that's going to have to be the federal government, the municipalities, the provinces, the private sector, not-for-profits. But what we're all saying here today is we are committed to working hard and to investing and to clearing, those little systemic barriers that are a big part of why not enough Canadians can afford to buy a home.
Okay, thank you. And your first stop after presenting the budget is here in Hamilton. Why?
Because Hamiltonians are incredibly proud of their city, as Alla and Ahmed talked to me about earlier, and it's a great example of a place that used to be known for a level of affordability that is now stunningly out of reach. To talk about a good typical neighborhood like this one, where the average house prices are $1 million, it just doesn't make sense to a whole lot of people. And I think this is something that we see resonating and reflected across the country. I also remember from the election campaign that we made a big housing announcement here in Hamilton as well. This is something that has mattered to us as a government, to us as a party, and to us as a team for a long time. And it's great to be back in Hamilton.
Next question.
Good afternoon. This is Lisa Pileski from Global News Hamilton. I'm asking some questions on behalf of my colleagues in Ottawa. Just given that hitting the benchmarks in the budget that you've set for new home construction will depend heavily on take-up by provinces and municipalities like Hamilton, where are we at today? Can you speak to what you expect of these other jurisdictions?
I think every jurisdiction across this country and every order of government recognizes that housing is not a luxury that only some should be able to afford in a country like Canada. Families that work hard, that want to build a future for themselves in neighborhoods that they love, need to be able to get into the housing market. And unfortunately, what we're seeing for far too many people is no matter how hard they work as young families, the benchmarks and the cost of entry into the housing market just seems to get further and further away faster than they can save and can move forward. This is a problem not just that the federal government needs to solve, although we have significant levers that we've put forward to help solve it, but it's for provinces and it's for municipalities. And we recognize, for example, that one of the challenges on municipalities isn't so much that they can put in huge amounts more money, because we all know how strapped municipal budgets are, but with federal investments that are targeting and supporting municipalities to unlock new supply, whether it's by accelerating permitting processes, whether it's by giving them supports for new developments, whether it's looking at conversion of existing stock, whether it's through things like the Rapid Housing Initiative. There are lots of things that an active, engaged federal government can do to help municipalities solve this challenge that they know is a huge reality for all their citizens. So yes, it's going to require all orders of government to work together, but I think we've demonstrated a few things during this pandemic, and one of them is that Canadians want to be there for each other, and the other is that orders of government can work together very effectively to solve crises and challenges, and that's exactly what we're counting on people to do all together for Canadians.
And given that the federal government owns so much property in the country, is there a role for the federal government to build homes on its own property to, in effect, become a landlord or residential property developer?
I think the federal government knows that there are many things that we can do to help, and making more federal lands available to create housing is a very good idea, but we know that housing developments are best partnered with builders, with municipalities, with people who have the experience in doing it. The federal government is there to create the conditions and the supports to make it happen, and that's why we are so confident that we're going to be able to double the amount of new homes in this country in the next 10 years.
Thanks very much.
Next question, please.
Hi, Nicole Thompson, the Canadian Press. The budget contained few details about how the new dental care program will actually work. Will it be administered by the federal government, or will that be downloaded to the provinces?
It's not right that in Canada, whether or not you can get a rotten tooth fixed depends on what your income is, or whether or not you have insurance. That's why moving forward with dental care for low-income Canadians is a priority of ours that we have put at the heart of this budget. We are going to work in partnership with provinces and territories and across jurisdictions to make sure that we are targeting supports first in the first 12 months to kids under 12 from low-income families to be able to access free dental care, and then over the coming years expand it so that every Canadian, every Canadian has access to dental care by focusing on making it available to low-income Canadians. This is a priority we've had. There's, as in so many things in this budget, work to do to deliver it. But we demonstrated last year with childcare, where there was a lot of skepticism as to whether or not Canada would actually achieve the childcare benchmarks, that we rolled up our sleeves, we worked on something that really matters to Canadians, and we got national childcare right across the country on cutting fees in half this year, and on our way to $10 within 5 years.
Okay, and how will $1.7 billion a year, once the program is fully implemented, be enough to provide dental care to families in Canada earning less than $90,000 annually? Should families expect to receive only very basic dental care?
I'm happy to turn over to Minister Freeland for that one.
So that 1.7 is actually higher than the PBO costing of the dental care proposal when it was put forward during the election campaign. We worked hard at finance to do some costings of the different stages of dental care that we have said we would deliver. It's sort of a staged approach. And the money that we set aside in the budget reflects those step-by-step costings. As the Prime Minister said, this is money we have put on the table, and now we have to do the work of rolling up our sleeves, working carefully with provinces and territories, and figuring out exactly how we are going to implement this program. And I am not going to claim it's going to be easy or simple. A collaborative approach always takes time, and it takes lots and lots of conversations. That's what all of us here actually discovered in working on early learning and childcare. But it's really the right thing to do. And I think that the challenges Canadians are facing now with affordability have made dental care an even better idea. You know, when I have talked to Canadians, vulnerable Canadians who are struggling with the cost of living right now, people have said to me, you know, groceries are so expensive now, it costs more than it did before to fill up my car or my truck. And I'm not sure I can afford to go to the dentist. I'm not sure I can afford to take my kid to the dentist. And I think it's just not right in our country for someone to lose a tooth or have to go to emergency because they don't have the money to go to the dentist. So we are going to do this. There is a significant amount of money in the budget to pay for it. And now we have to roll up our sleeves in order to, you know, work with the provinces and territories and develop a program.
Next question, please.
Hi there, Dan Takama from CBC News. I have a question on behalf of my colleagues in Ottawa, and if you wouldn't mind answering in French as well, that would be great. The federal budget talks about the need to address chronic labor shortages, but in Canada there are thousands of skilled workers and recent grads who are waiting in limbo but can't get permanent residency. IRCC hasn't held express entry draws for the Canadian Experience class since last September, for the Skilled Workers Program since 2020. Can you give them a concrete date as to when draws, which used to happen every 2 weeks, will happen, and what those whose visas are expiring in the coming weeks and will have to leave Canada because your government hasn't allowed them to apply for PR, will they be granted an extension on their visas?
Canada is a country that has benefited incredibly from people coming here from all around the world and building a life for themselves, building communities for all of us, and building a stronger Canada. And we're going to continue. Obviously, the 2 years almost in which Canada had closed its borders because of COVID-19 created challenges and backlogs and delays in getting in the labor force that we need, getting in the new Canadians that we need to build the future. And that's why the Department of Immigration is working incredibly hard with some of the most ambitious targets Canada has ever seen, over 400,000 new Canadians to be coming in this year. At the same time as we're dealing with refugee crises, of bringing in over 40,000 Afghan refugees, of responding to the humanitarian disaster that is Putin's illegal war in Ukraine, We are working incredibly hard to make sure that we're continuing to welcome in families who will be successful, be able to contribute and grow our economy. And I can assure you that Immigration and Citizenship Canada is pulling out all the stops to solve the challenges that our system is facing right now. L'immigration est une partie essentielle de notre avenir en tant que pays. Ça bâtit ce pays jusqu'à ces jours-ci. Et nous allons continuer d'investir pour s'assurer qu'on a le meilleur système au monde. Et évidemment, avec les 2 ans où qu'on a eu des frontières fermées aux nouveaux arrivants, on a accumulé des délais, on a besoin d'accueillir encore plus de monde plus rapidement. On a des cibles de plus de 400 000 nouveaux Canadiens cette année. En plus de tout le travail qu'on est en train de faire sur les réfugiés, que ce soit les Afghans ou les Ukrainiens ou d'autres, nous allons continuer d'être là pour assurer un système d'immigration rapide, fort et équitable.
Thank you. Hamilton, like a lot of cities across Canada, has seen a lot of new subdivisions go up and be built. But those houses are not only unaffordable to a lot of people, they also don't seem to lower the price of the older housing stock. You talked about this neighborhood and the prices they're seeing here, $1 million. So how will you make new housing built that is actually affordable, and how are you defining affordable? And if you wouldn't mind French as well.
One of the things we've been talking about is that there needs to be a range of measures we put forward to address the housing crisis across the country. The first one is to make sure that Canadians have an easier time saving up for their first home. But we're also going to be investing in supply to create more supply. We're also going to be stopping speculation. So many of the new homes are being looked at as assets, as investments, as opposed to places to raise families and create communities. By cracking down on foreign buyers, by banning foreign buyers for the next couple of years, by making sure that we're standing up for home buyers' rights with the Home Buyers Bill of Rights. These are things that are going to ensure a fairer market and more access to people, that even as we increase supply, we should create paths into that supply for families. Nous savons que on a des défis au niveau du logement à travers le pays. C'est pour ça que nous mettons de l'avant une gamme de solutions pour, oui, aider les Canadiens à épargner, oui, créer plus d'offres de logements à travers le pays, mais aussi en limitant l'utilisation d'achats de logements comme investissement. Des maisons, c'est pour élever des familles, c'est pour bâtir un avenir, une communauté. C'est pas pour faire de l'argent dans le court terme ou le moyen terme pour des grandes entreprises ou bien des investisseurs étrangers. C'est pour ça que nous amenons une interdiction de l'achat par des propriétaires étrangers pendant les prochaines années.
We have time for one last question.
Sebastian Braun from the Hamilton Spectator. You committed in the budget to studying the taxation of real estate investment trusts. Why is it taking it so long, and why don't you just do it? These trusts have amassed massive portfolios of rental properties all across the country, and often hiking up rents, pushing tenants out, in effect financializing the housing market, which seems to be something that you guys want to stifle. So,
yeah, as I said, we will be cracking down on the financialization of the housing market. Houses aren't supposed to be assets for wealthy investors. They're supposed to be homes where families can raise their kids and create neighborhoods and communities. So on that, I'll pass it over to Chrystia Freeland.
Yeah, thank you, Prime Minister, and thank you for the question. So this is something we are absolutely committed to doing. We were very clear in the budget, and the Prime Minister has been very clear today, that our government believes the financialization of housing is a problem. We believe that houses should be homes for Canadian families, not a speculative financial asset class. Our tax system and our investment system are complicated, and we are committed to acting. We're also committed to doing it carefully. But make no mistake, we are going to act, because this is a problem for Canadians, and Canadians want us to act to end the financialization of housing. And I do want to say one more thing about supply, if I may. So there was a really good question a moment ago about how, there are these new homes being built, new suburbs springing up, but the houses there don't seem to be less expensive. And we have these new suburbs, but the houses in older, beautiful neighborhoods like this one don't seem to be getting less expensive either. So what's going on and what can you do about it? And I just want to emphasize how important the supply side of this is. There are a lot of challenges with housing in Canada, and that's why our housing plan has a lot of different planks in it. But the most fundamental fact is our population is growing faster than our supply of housing. It's just a problem of numbers and of math. And as a country, we want to be a growing country. And it is great that we are a growing country. But in order to be a country that grows in a healthy, sustainable way, we just have to build more homes. And at its heart, that's what this plan is about.
Thank you. We'll take your last question.
House flipping is a big issue here in Hamilton, and I know in the budget you guys spoke about some measures that will look to handle this problem. People buy a home and sell it in less than 12 months. What sort of things are we talking about here? Are we talking about taxes,
Yeah. We are talking about the fact that if someone buys a house and resells it within 12 months, they're not going to get the same kinds of advantages, tax advantages, that someone would get when they sell their primary residence after having lived in it for many years. We do not want people to think of buying homes as a way to make money rapidly. Homes should be for families to grow in, and quite frankly, the folks who are using them as investment vehicles by flipping should not be getting the same kinds of advantages that families like Peter and Felicia will have when they choose to upgrade in a few years from this beautiful home. They should not be treated the same way as a speculator who's flipping a home every year. These are things that we're moving forward on the budget. Again, with the focus on making sure that families across this country can get into their first home, can start that path towards building a better future for themselves and their kids.
Thank you. That concludes today's press conference. Merci. Ceci met fin à la conférence de presse.
Merci tout le monde.